Hey friends, welcome back to the channel. Kyle here, and I hope you're doing well wherever you're watching this from. Now today we're going to be talking about this. This is the Breville Barista Express Impress. It's an updated model to their very popular Barista Express, a machine we talked about years ago on this channel a lot. And that's because it was one of the most popular home espresso machines probably ever, and it may still be just that, because Breville made this espresso machine that had a built-in grinder for the ability to pour your whole beans in, grind it into the portafilter, and then put the portafilter into the machine, hit a button, and brew espresso. It wasn't super automatic where it was just one press button and it does everything, so you still felt very involved in the espresso making process, but it wasn't overly complicated like maybe a prosumer level machine where you have to figure out how to do everything without any help and buying a grinder separately. So in this video, we're gonna talk all about the Barista Express Impress, how it differs from the Barista Express, what they've improved, if I recommend it to you. But first, let's talk all about this, give an overview and my first thoughts, both good and bad, and talk about who this is for. This has a lot of shared components with the Barista Express. Now that's both good and bad because the Barista Express was super great. It was super durable, and honestly, I have friends who have 10-year-old plus machines, no issues. They are built like tanks. So the Barista Express Impress is also going to be built like a tank in its longevity. Now this machine is an all-in-one. So you have a grinder over here. Now this has a conical burst set in it, and it's essentially the Breville Smart Grinder Pro, which is a grinder that Breville sells separately, built into an espresso machine. This one has less steps of adjustment. You adjust the grind size with the dial on the side of the machine. Now what I've noticed is if you're gonna use super light roasted coffee, this grinder doesn't have quite the power to do it for, some of the coffees that I roast, I brew. At September, we roast both like medium and light roast. We don't do typical dark roast. So for us, it's not ideal, but depending on if you like really dark roast coffee, if you can see like the oils on the beans, you'll be fine on this kind of grinder. But if you like really light specialty roasted coffee, then this might not be the best for you. Regardless, moving on. It has a very unique feature that is different than the Barista Express. Now the Breville Barista Express Impress has a built-in tamper system and a volumetric dosing system. Let me show you. And then what you'll do is you'll take your portafilter and you're gonna place it into this chute up here. It's got an automatic and a manual dosing feature. Right now we're gonna use the automatic, and what it's gonna do is learn how much coffee needs to be ground into the portafilter. So what you do is you hit the auto and then you're gonna hit the dosing button. What we're gonna do then is use this handle on the side of the machine. Now a tamper is a small little device, typically with a metal flat end, and you're compressing the coffee into a coffee puck. That's what makes espresso espresso. Espresso isn't a coffee bean or a roast style. It's none of that. It's actually a brew method. So if you brew pour over, that's one brew method. You brew like a French press, that's like an immersion brew method where the coffee sits with the water in the same vessel. And then there's also something like espresso. And espresso is simply coffee under pressure. Right? You typically go up to around 9 bars of pressure. You're pressing water through a compacted puck of coffee. So at this point, we're gonna take this handle and we're going to press it all the way down. And then over here, you're gonna see it actually shows a little meter. Now on this meter, it's got a smiley face, and smiley face is always good. And so when this is happy, you're happy, I'm happy, your machine's happy, it's brewing tasty coffee. Now, luckily in my first dose here, it was pretty close to the center. If not, what it's gonna do is it's gonna tell you that your coffee puck had too little of a dose, and it's gonna teach itself if you compact it, it didn't grind enough coffee, it might be on the low end after you compact it because there's just not enough coffee in that coffee portafilter. You're gonna have to redose. So you'll hit that button again, and in the auto feature, it will learn and it will adjust. And the next time you grind, it will grind the exact amount that you need. Pretty neat, very smart. And for beginners, I think it's one of those features that just makes a lot of sense. While it has its flaws that we'll talk about later in this video, so be sure to stick around for that. I think it makes a lot of sense for people who really don't care to learn the nuances of espresso in the same way that like an enthusiast or somebody who really cares about espresso to the 9th degree would care about. Let me show you how this tamper works real quick. You can pop this off on the front, and then inside here you can see that portafilter. It spins, it compresses the puck, it spins, compresses the puck. And as I mentioned earlier, you can swap this over to a manual dosing. So if you want to adjust with this little dial here, you can adjust how much coffee you want to dose in. I actually really like the auto feature, so I'd recommend trying the auto feature, but the manual's there if you want to use it. Also, I'm always using the double shot portafilter basket here. I think it just makes more sense, and you're going to get better shots typically, especially in this machine. So I would recommend using the double shot if you can. There's 2 buttons here. They're both volumetric. I find the first shot or 2 can be a little on the cooler side. So to ensure that you have a really good pre-infusion and really good consistent temperature in your shot, try to flush it at least once or twice. For me, I just do this before I pull it every morning. And if you're fancy like me, you're gonna grab a scale. You're gonna be able to measure both the time of the shot and also the dose. So I don't love using volumetrics to measure espresso. It's just not as consistent. So if we can measure by mass and weight, that is the preferred method here. So we're gonna use a scale under here, and then gonna hit our double shot button here. And so it's not getting up into the espresso range, which is this gray dial here, which means we didn't grind fine enough, especially because our dose was in the good range. Now, you might be wondering, well, it still looks pretty good, and you'd be able to drink this, obviously, with espresso, depending on the style shot that you want. Today, we're gonna go for like more of a traditional style shot. You wanna get up into that pressure range of at least 6 to 9 bars to be able to pull a good shot of espresso with high texture, good mouthfeel. You want that ooey gooiness. And so what we're gonna do, we're gonna find out this grind and try this again. You can see here on this next shot, I changed the grind settings, so it's gonna change the way it doses. So now we're only at 2, it's telling me to redose again. It only grinds a certain amount this time, not the full amount. Tamp again, and now we're here at the green at the happy face. So really cool feature, it's neat that it learns. It's got some flaws we'll talk about, but I think very cool, especially for beginners. All right, this time we're a little better. We could probably go a little finer here because it's just on the low end of that espresso range. Quite honestly, that's a passable shot for me, so let's taste it. It's a good shot. And if I want to take this one step further, I would fine up that ground by 1 notch because it was just in that espresso range. We don't need to make big adjustments here. It would likely be perfect. We have one more thing to cover, and that is the steaming. So if you want to make a milk beverage, which I'm sure many people who are interested in this machine would be, you have a steam arm here to be able to steam your milk. So I've got some cold milk here. I've got a steam arm. What we're gonna do is there's a dial on this side of the machine. You're gonna twist it to the little steaming indicator. Inside this machine, you have something called a thermal coil, okay? It's got basically a stream of water that runs through a massive metal. That massive metal heats up, and it heats up the water that's in contact with. This is really great because it warms up in around 15 seconds, maybe a little less. It's very quick, so if you're in the morning, you don't have to wait for a machine to warm up. You can hit this, walk away, come back, and it's gonna be hot. I'd recommend waiting a little longer because there's components of this that aren't quite as hot as the water itself, like the portafilter, the shower head. The longer you wait, the more thermal stability will be in the machine, but you don't have to. And the other thing with the thermal coil is it's quick, but it's a little slower on steam. But when you turn on the steam, it's going to then swap from water to steam. So it's gonna have to get to a higher temperature. And because there's not 2 separate systems for steam and water, it does take, let's time this. Okay, so I'd say that was 28 seconds to get up to temperature. Let's steam some milk. Now, the steam, the milk that it creates, the texture of the milk rather, it's good and it's very forgiving. This is a machine that takes a while. It took an extra 45 seconds to a minute just to steam the milk on top of the heat up time. So I do find this to be a very slow steaming machine, which is not a bad thing, but it's definitely focused towards people who are learning how to steam milk. If you're a barista, you work in a cafe, you're gonna find this a little frustrating coming from a commercial machine that can take seconds to heat up and steam milk, where this one can take like a minute. So keep that in mind, but if you're interested in learning how to steam milk, I think this is one of the better machines to do so because of how forgiving it is. Okay, we made an espresso, we've created a little magic or a piccolo here, and I want to talk about things I love about the Barista Express Impress, some things I don't after that. This thing is interesting. This machine obviously has some shared components with its older predecessor. The body looks nearly identical. Most of the components are the same. It's got the same heating element as the older machine, but the good parts here is that we know it's going to be durable. It's going to be reliable. I currently have friends who have a Barista Express and they've had a machine for a decade now, and there's been very few, if no, issues with the machine. The thermal coil in these machines is incredibly durable, at least the Express was, so I hope we'll see the same in the Express Impress. Obviously, the components that are new is this tamper, but I don't really see a ton that could go wrong there mechanically, other than maybe the tamper breaking. I don't see that happening though. I also love that Breville has focused again on usability, right? We have this tamper with an automatic volumetric dosing feature. Super cool, and we're not really seeing this on a ton of other machines, only a few. The drip tray here has storage behind it, and all of their models do. The components are not plasticky, but they are plastic. They have a stainless steel wrap on them. While it's not as durable as something that you might spend more money on, I can't complain. I think for a home appliance is better than most. Overall, when it comes to pros, there's a lot to love here with the Barista Express Impress because it's so user-friendly. It's incredibly easy to use for the most part. I think overall, it just makes a lot of sense for a lot of people. But, and a big but, and I cannot lie, there are some things here that I don't love from Breville that we need to talk about. Okay, let's start over here with the tamper. Now, this grinder in here is fine. You know, it's not the best grinder in the world, and on this channel we talk tons about grinders and the effects they have on the cup and the espresso and the coffee that we can create. But this one here, it's fine for beginners. It'll get you by. It'll probably be one of the first things you're gonna wanna upgrade if you buy this machine. It's fine though, and for beginners, especially people who like medium to dark roasts, this is gonna get you by fine for many years. But the tamping feature here is both good and bad. I love that this tamps coffee for you. I think it's very intuitive that they have a tamper built in here, especially from a company like Breville, which has so many beginner home baristas. But we got to talk about some things I don't love. One of those being that we cannot prep our puck. Now, if you have no idea what I'm talking about, let me explain. With espresso, one of the biggest components of espresso preparation is ensuring that we distribute the grounds inside of our portafilter as evenly as possible, so that when the water comes through that puck of coffee, it comes through the puck of coffee as evenly as possible, and it's not taking any paths of least resistance that will create uneven extractions. Now, if we want to get geeky about this, it's pretty much impossible to avoid some sort of channeling, but we want to reduce that as much as possible. We want the coffee to be as evenly extracted as possible. So the coffee on this side is extracted the same as the coffee on this side and this side and this side. That will create the best tasting espresso and more consistent espressos. If we have tons of channeling, puck to puck to puck, every shot can taste just slightly different. One can be slightly under extracted, one might be not up to pressure. There might be different realities like that. Now with espresso preparation, we typically use tools like this. This is called the Weiss distribution tool, or the WDT, and it's basically just little needles that you stir around your coffee before you compress it, before you tamp it. These have been very popular over the past few years, and rightfully so. It really has changed the consistency we can find within our espresso, creating the most delicious coffee possible. Because of this machine's design, it's really hard to distribute our grounds, because when we grind into the portafilter right here, there's no way to pull this out without making a big mess and losing coffee. But if you have like darker roasts, or if you have medium dark roasts, it might be less of an issue compared to somebody who has a light roast, which those people are probably not buying a machine like this anyways. Moving on. The analog gauge here is really interesting. On my Barista Express from years ago, it was consistent to know when I was pulling the perfect shot of espresso. And typically, it was actually just at the top of its range for espresso, pulling a really nice 9 bar of pressure. Now, this machine doesn't seem to be that way. I typically find myself in the middle of the gray here, and I thought mine was maybe just an error, but consulting with other friends who have this machine, it does seem like this is consistent across the board. The gauge is clearly different here, or at least it's calibrated differently than its prior machine. Now, Breville has updated all of their newer machines with something called a thermal jet. It's something that is way faster than the thermal coil in these machines, way faster, like 3 seconds to heat up, and the steaming power is near instant compared to waiting, as you saw, like 20-30 seconds. If you're a patient person, no big deal, but if you're an impatient person like me, this is going to be a little annoying. It's completely usable. But overall, what do I think about the Barista Express Impress? I've been using this machine since February now, and so I've been using it a lot. I've made sure to take my time on this because I used the Barista Express for years before ever reviewing it. I like this machine. For me, it's everything the Barista Express was, that very familiar espresso machine for the home, with a ton of usability here, the ability to make very tasty coffees, good milk beverages if that's your jam, but it's got similar quirks to the Barista Express plus a few extras. And then the tamper is both amazing and frustrating. Because I can't WDT or distribute my grounds, it really makes this machine a machine that is focused for one consumer and one consumer only. For the person who wants coffee with a little fuss. And I think that's it. You know, it's not a matter of being a beginner or not, because I think if you are a novice or you're an experienced barista, if you just want something simple and you don't want any fuss, this just still might be the machine for you. I think this is the simplest all-in-one semi-automatic espresso machine on the market because you have the tamper built in, there's no other parts laying around. This is it, right? It's all built in one. There are huge flaws within that, right? There are huge flaws and limits in terms of the capabilities of this machine because of that. But I think if you like the Barista Express, but you want even more simplicity and you just don't really care to learn all the nuances within brewing espresso and you don't want to be a home barista, then this is the machine for you. So now I pass this off to you. What do you think? What do you think of the Breville Barista Express? Is this a machine that interests you? Do you think that Breville fell short here? Is there something that you wish they added to this machine? Do you wish they had the thermal jet in here? Or do you prefer the components that they have in this machine? And are you going to be interested in checking this out? Now, if you are, I'll leave links to this product and everything I talked about today down below. Also, if you learned something in this video, you enjoyed it, you found it informational or entertaining, please tamp that like button down below for the YouTube algorithm. Really appreciate that. Subscribe if you haven't already for more espresso content, more content on videos like these, and leave a comment down below before you leave. I would greatly appreciate that. Also, you can check out my Patreon down below where we give away coffee gear every single month, including coffee to patrons, as well as you can just support the channel by doing so. We'll talk to you guys in the next video. Have a wonderful day. I'll see you guys soon. Bye.